DeShaun Foster's vision is clear. His class of 2026 is going to rise into the top 20 before we know it.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your longtime host, Zach Anderson Yoxheimer, broadcaster, podcast host. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, obviously, we're going to talk about the endless commitments that UCLA got for their class of 2026 after having nothing for a long time. We'll talk about the softball team getting the Supers and UCLA baseball clinching a share of the first Big Ten title. Where we get started today with a 6-month dormant period for UCLA recruiting in the class of 2026, you're starting to think like, hey, what's DeShaun Foster doing? Well, obviously, a lot of that had to do with improving his current team's roster, the class of 2025, via the transfer portal in the winter, the early signing period, and then, surprisingly, even more so in the spring transfer portal, where I'm not sure how many teams did as much as UCLA did in the spring window. But now that all the chaos has slowly begun to calm down, you have Nico there, you've got Madden Iamaleava, Nico's brother, officially signed, and any sort of NIL drama is between Madden and Arkansas Edge, or, it's really out at UCLA's headache anymore. They've gotten more players to bolster the running back room, receiver room, even players that are coming to bolster the special teams units. UCLA has been getting a lot of action, but they still had a huge drop-off in the class of 2026. No longer. After 4 commits for a good chunk of 2024 into 2025, UCLA doubled their commitments in the class of 2026 in less than a week. So after all that fretting, no. DeShaun Foster went out and got even more commits. I was out camping, and I'm like, what are we doing? What's going on? What is going on? Let's tell you what's going on. UCLA got a commitment. They had a recruiting event of sorts over the weekend to start the weekend. They had Yahya Gaad, if I'm even saying that right. Yahya is a guy from Tennessee who is a D lineman, and UCLA is like, all right, what are we going to go after here? Gaad, according to 24/7 Sports, although these websites and these recruiting outlets have had various rankings for UCLA's class of 2026, Gaad, as low as a 3-star recruit, hailing from South Gibson from Medina, Tennessee, committed to UCLA surprisingly on a Friday night, unexpectedly. He still was being recruited by Wisconsin, still had some big-time official visits to take. And that's another defensive guy the Bruins are looking to bolster the depth of their future recruiting classes on defense. UCLA lost so much talent when Latu Latu went to the NFL draft, and this year's linebacking core went to the draft as well. Now they're trying to replenish that. They did as much as they could in the last 2 transfer classes, but you can't just live every single year filling out an entire roster 2 deep with transfers. Some teams can. I don't think UCLA could do that every single year and have a successful defense without some homegrown guys. And they bring in Yahya, who still has an official visit or is supposed to in late May to June coming up. And that's where UCLA steals another commitment from a Big Ten rival, where normally you would think, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? That's DeShaun Foster's vision. Then later on in the weekend on Sunday, you got Camden Jensen, a tight end. I had spoke about how UCLA is going to go after a lot of defensive guys, and right on cue, you get a big commitment from a D lineman on Friday, but a surprisingly big-time get in Camden Jensen, a Sunday commit for a Colorado tight end who, depending on who you're looking at in the recruiting cycle, be like, wait a minute, is he another 4-star? Is he a 3-star? Was one of the best and highly rated recruits in the state of Colorado, and he chose UCLA over Florida, Nebraska, Missouri, a top 20 tight end in the class of 2026. Remember, UCLA's losing Maliki Monteval. You've got Hudson Hammermill returning from injury in 2025. But what does UCLA look like in the tight end room beyond this season? Well, that's where Jensen could potentially come in. Maybe he's a first-year contributor. Maybe he's not. That's a huge get to add some beef. 6'7", 220 pounds. He has official visits for the next month, but it's his relationship, according to On3, with Jerry Neuheisel, who is the lead recruiter. This is where we're sitting there like, Jerry. There's a reason Jerry Neuheisel, despite multiple coaching staffs and coaching changes, he continues to work his way up the ladder. At some point, maybe Jerry Neuheisel will be destined to be a head coach of UCLA and follow in his father's footsteps. But right now, he is one of the leading recruiters at whatever position he's going to coach. At the moment, the tight end position. Developed a relationship with this 6'7" tight end beast. That's a big man playing your tight end position. And he comes in, and UCLA gets him to commit before going with other official visits to the SEC, the Big Ten. And you're starting to see a trend. If UCLA can bring them in, they will lock you down and lock you in, and we'll talk about them on Locked On UCLA. That's just who's committed. Looking on rivals, UCLA has another crystal ball with a receiver, a slot receiver, who's supposed to take an official visit to UCLA in a month. Santana Carlos from Florida, class of 2026, 5'11", 170 pounds. Crystal ball, about 16th at his position according to rivals, has had quite a few offers from Louisville, UCLA, Purdue, Pitt, Ole Miss, just in this calendar year, or some of which he might even take some official visits to those schools. But he's getting crystal balled as a Florida guy to UCLA, and his official visit isn't for a month. So there's potential for within the next couple of weeks, UCLA to get even more commits, and they're so outstanding on these visits that they're impressing guys that UCLA might not have had a chance to get a couple of weeks ago, or they're even surprising commits so much that they're like, I still have another official visit to take, which means you got to take all this with a grain of salt, right? That they're going to choose UCLA. Obviously, the energy of these events, it's like putting someone on the spot in a proposal, putting someone on the spot in a big question, in a big commitment opportunity. But UCLA is swinging big, and they're coming down with big-time commits. And Santana Carlos is huge. Reading another report from Rivals on the Bruin Blitz, how they hosted Rex Waterman as well over the weekend, a 3-star offensive lineman, 6'5", 295 pounds from Chandler, Arizona, getting recruited by Duke, Nebraska, Arizona State, Boise State, so some playoff contenders in there. ACC and Big Ten rivals mixed in as well. UCLA, of that list, has the least amount of offensive tackles on the roster projected going forward. So then Rex Waterman comes in, and according to Tracy McDaniel, the Bruin Blitz, was quoted as saying, UCLA is the leader in the clubhouse for me. So you got another offensive lineman. You're beefing up the trenches. You're getting even bigger in the tight end room, which can help you in blocking, the run game, and certainly a big target in the red zone, whether it's whoever's throwing passes in 2026, they will potentially, as long as Jensen stays committed to UCLA, a tough chore this day and age now, I must add, you'd have a big-time tight end and potential offensive tackle in Rex Waterman, who, again, in a quote from the Rivals article on the Bruin Blitz, saying UCLA is the leader in the clubhouse. All in the span of a week, all in the span of a huge recruiting week. You mix in Andy Kwan there, who's the O-line coach for UCLA, Jerry Neuheisel's relentless recruiting, what Coach Mead has done in the secondary to overhaul that class, Jethro Franklin mixed with Akaika Malloy, and how the Bruins have transformed the future, the D-line for UCLA. And man, this is fantastic. You look at what their recruiting numbers are. UCLA, according to Rivals, is just outside the top 30. All right. They've got 8 commits now, doubling their commitment total in the span of 4 to 5, 6 days, even with some surprising commits. A crystal ball for one. We'll see if that comes to fruition. And other guys where UCLA is the leader in the clubhouse, that's not a commitment, nothing signed until the NIL contract is signed. But that is continual progress for something that UCLA did not have. According to On3, UCLA is putting big numbers. On3's team recruiting rankings has UCLA's 23rd right now. Now, 24/7 Sports, a little more hesitant, I would say, in terms of their recruiting rankings. The Bruins inside the top 40, low 30s, same thing for Rivals. But On3 says this is what UCLA's been doing with what they've brought in. The Bruins are sitting top 25 after just a week ago being below Sac State and being outside the top 40 in some recruiting analysts' models. And now here they are pushing top 20 in a week. The vision is clear, and the Bruins are making moves for the present and the future. And now Foster has shifted to the future, and he's making it happen. Absolutely making it happen. Don't be shocked if the Bruins somehow close the gap and get into top 15 if they keep this recruiting heat going. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. The UCLA softball team, they had the heat going in a weekend where they dominated their regional. Of the 16 seeds that were hosts, only 25% didn't make it. UCLA was a part of the majority that made it to the Supers. But they're on the road to Columbia. Let's talk about Kelly Inouye Perez's team and what they did over the regional and who is red hot with a stick and how the Bruins got it done. Next on Locked on UCLA. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO and gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just another budgeting app. It's complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, spending, investments all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When you started using Monarch, you're like, okay, what am I spending too much on? For me, it's like, man, I like to go to a game a lot. I like to spend a lot of food going out a lot. How can I maximize going to more games while not spending too much on dining out? Well, that's where you're like, wait a minute, I spent that much on food delivery? Now you can budget, and I can budget smarter and save even more money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Once again, the UCLA softball team is super. What does that mean? They're on to the super regionals. UCLA absolutely dominated the LA regional and swept it 3-0. All right, in 3 straight games, pretty dominant. In a wacky opening weekend of the softball tournament. Let's get down to business here. Obviously, everybody is trying to shut down Oklahoma. Oklahoma has won every tournament since COVID. The last team to win a championship that was not Oklahoma in the sport of softball, UCLA. Who'd they beat? Oklahoma. All right? So ever since that terrible tournament where the UCLA Bruins went 2-0, they were the 2 seed. You could argue they were the embarrassment of the tournament a couple years ago, got back to the Women's College World Series, have some juniors that are just smacking the living heck out of the ball, some youngsters playing really well, pitching really well, playing 2 or 3 different roles, and UCLA found themselves dominating the weekend. Well, UCLA is no longer this overall top seed to go down. UCLA was the 2 seed. This year, Texas A&M, the number 1 overall seed, couldn't escape their own regional in College Station. They found themselves falling short to Liberty. Now, reading up on how they placed these regionals, because they made 30 SEC teams make it, obviously sarcasm implied there. Texas A&M had a tough 2 seed in Liberty, but Liberty went through and won the regional anyway. And what does that mean? Liberty's paired up with Oregon, the 16 seed, one of the most underseeded teams in the tournament, who had hit a walk-off 3-run bomb to make it to the Super Regionals. The 16 seed gets to play the Cinderella, if you will, that side of the bracket. Florida and Georgia on one side after Duke, another team that was a 1 seed, did not make it out. Clemson took care of business against Kentucky and Northwestern. They'll be taking the battle against Texas, who took out the Big Ten tournament champion, Michigan. Tennessee beat Ohio State, UNC, Miami of Ohio. They're taking on a good Nebraska team because they got one of the best players in the tournament so far. And Nebraska, one of the other unseeded teams to make it. LSU losing in their bracket in regional to UConn, Southeast Louisiana. It's Nebraska who won the Baton Rouge regional. And then you had Ole Miss surprisingly getting out of the West Coast regional or Western regional of Arizona, Santa Clara, Grand Canyon, and Ole Miss. So the unseeded teams, Ole Miss, Nebraska, Liberty, all finding their ways to make it to the next round. Maybe I forgot a team or two. The Bruins, with their weekend sweep, dominating San Diego State and UCSB twice, found themselves en route to Columbia this weekend, which will be another discussion for another podcast. UCLA, after their Big Ten tournament loss to Michigan, was like, what are we going to do? Do we have a sneaky top bracket? They did. San Diego State was a really good mid-major team, and I thought might play the role of spoiler, and I really thought they would beat Arizona State, which they did. But the Bruins had to take on a UCSB team who I wasn't thinking would challenge UCLA. And funny enough, UCLA against the Big West pitcher of the year was scoreless until the bottom of the fourth inning, trailing 1-0. So more than half the game played, UCLA was down 1-0 to another quote-unquote 4 seed, or the worst team in the bracket in the first round of their tournament in their regional pod. Before the last few innings, UCLA just broke down the Gauchos. 3 runs in the fourth, 6 runs in the sixth, and an absolutely dominant performance on Friday night at Easton Stadium. Who are some of the heroes there? You see Jessica Clements, who had a 3-run bomb, 2 for 4. You had Savannah Polo, who continues to have a great rebound year this season, 2 for 3. Jordan Woolery, 1 for 4. Megan Grant, who I said was a key for UCLA to go far in the tournament, hits home runs in bunches and hit one on a Friday night, 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs. In the circle, you look at 1, Taylor Tinsley, 3 hits, 1 earned run, not blowing it past the Gaucho bats with only 1 K. But you keep your team in the game where you're getting quick and easy outs, making the defense work. And Tinsley was able to keep the Gauchos mostly off balance with only 43 pitches thrown. And Caitlin Terry, who surprisingly did not get the start for UCLA Friday night, got a night off, started in right, relieved, and closed out a run rule dominant victory for the Bruins over the Gauchos on Friday night, 9-1. So that was a fascinating decision that Coach Inouye Perez did not go with Terry to start, but instead from right field into relief. The Bruins in the winner's bracket game against San Diego State, another 6-inning affair where UCLA got on top early this time against the Aztecs after they no-hit them in San Diego a month or two ago. We're up 3-0, scored 1 in the 5th, and then just finally closed the door in the 6th inning with a 6-run 6th. Jordan Woolery hit a 3-run bomb and then had another RBI triple in the 5th before the Bruins started breaking down the Aztecs. This was a Caitlin Terry 6-inning shutout affair. 5 Ks, 1 walk. And in the first couple of games, UCLA not issuing too many free passes. In 2 games, in those first 2 where they were 2-0 en route to the regional championship round, 2 walks, 6 Ks. So not overly dominant in terms of just blowing the ball past the bats of their opponents, but they're getting outs. The bats woke up, and in the end, they're not issuing free passes. So Terry was dominant. The fascinating thing was, in a regional with UCSB, Arizona State, and San Diego State, when it came to UCLA playing with a chance, and in their case, 2 chances to make it to the Supers, I did not have UCSB as the team they would face to try and beat them and get to the Super Regional round against South Carolina. That's what happened. ASU was 2-out. San Diego State went to play UCSB and lost. All right, there were some crazy games in the UCLA Regional. The Bruins just were not a part of them because they once again beat the Gauchos and beat them 12-1 in 5 innings. A 4-run outburst in the first, 4-run outburst in the second, a crooked number of 3 in the 4th inning, and the Bruins weren't even done scoring another in the 5th. Just utterly dominant all weekend long, where over the weekend I said, all right, what's Megan Grant got to do? She went 4 for 11 and had like 6 RBIs, a couple of RBIs in each and every game and kept bashing the ball over the fence. Jessica Clements, also 2 for 4, 2 RBIs in that final game. Jordan Woolery was spectacular. In their final game of the weekend, you had Taylor Tinsley, 4 innings, 3 hits, 6 Ks, no walks. So in her second meeting with the Gauchos of the weekend was just as good. Pitched, 8 innings against UCSB in the 2 meetings. Gave up 1 run, 7 Ks, and 1 walk. Amazing. And then for the final inning relief, you had Jada Cecil, who came in with a K. Over the entire weekend, UCLA walked 2 hitters, and gave up a combined, 2 runs, both to UCSB, who came into this regional winning 6 straight elimination games, won 8 straight elimination games before the Bruins finally took out the Gauchos. So you got to applaud all those teams that made the regional, including UCSB, who was a surprising underdog to make it to the regional final against UCLA, but the Bruins took care of business. When the number 1 overall seed loses, you really have to relish in these moments. You're like, wow. Probably a lot tougher for other teams who got worse draws, but the Bruins took care of business, and they can't take it for granted after what happened a couple of seasons ago. Great job for UCLA getting back there, but now a tough road. Normally, UCLA has been able to host their way to get to Oklahoma City. Not in this case. You could argue that the Bruins were, a bit screwed out of an 8 seed compared to South Carolina, maybe a bit more deserving than the Gamecocks to host this super regional, then maybe that puts a rallying cry for the team to go beat down South Carolina, take out an SEC team. But as we all know, it's everybody versus Oklahoma, who is trying to win 5 championships in a row in the sport of softball. And until they're taken down, they are the evil empire in the sport of softball. Can UCLA do it? They're going to need a lot from their pitching that did not overly dominate in the strikeout department, but was elite at keeping runners off the base paths from issuing free passes. Only 2 walks in 3 games. Couple of 3 run rule victories, and the Bruins were dominant. We'll talk more about them in the Supers and what this South Carolina matchup brings in the next couple of days. But now let's celebrate a UCLA baseball Big Ten championship. A co-Big Ten championship, but they still got the job done. Let's talk about them next on Locked on UCLA. So last time I talked to you guys, UCLA had just lost to Northwestern, all right? So with that loss to Northwestern to open a Thursday through Saturday series to set the Bruins up for success potentially, that took out any opportunity for UCLA to win an outright Big Ten championship and be the 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. In the end, it was a tie between UCLA and Oregon, came down to that Easter Sunday clash where UCLA lost in Eugene, and that's how the Oregon Ducks, who went red hot to the finish, swept Iowa. And as expected, Iowa had a win over the last 3 weekends versus Washington, Oregon State, who's not in the conference, they only tied them, and got swept by the Oregon Ducks at home. So once the Iowa Hawkeyes faced some decent competition in Big Ten play and out of conference, they folded, as was expected. The problem was UCLA did not take care of business. They needed a sweep of Northwestern, and Oregon did their job. It just unfortunately came down to a tie atop the standings. So the UCLA Bruins got to celebrate a co-Big Ten championship in their first year. Not even the softball team could celebrate that because Oregon, in that same Easter weekend, also beat the Bruins in Eugene in a 2 out of 3, which made the difference in the Big Ten standings. All the difference in the head-to-head, the tiebreaker, the separation between the two teams. And still, UCLA's looking to host. Looking at the latest bracketology by D1 Baseball, UCLA is looking to be at one of 3 Western regionals, and they would host UC Irvine because they've fallen off the hosting map after a rough couple of weekends in the Big West. So still, winning the series was huge, clinching a share of the conference championship, and being the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament, a lot better than being the 3 seed. What does that exactly mean? Well, for a team that boasts arguably the best player in the country, Rock Chalowski, I think I saw on social media today on X or whatever it was that according to 643 Sports, if that's not mistaken, it was posted by somebody else, Rock Chalowski leads the country. If you're really nerdy into baseball analytics like I can be at times, Rock Chalowski leads the country in all of NCAA D1 baseball in WAR, wins above replacement. That's how dominant the best Bruins player has been. The step up from freshman to sophomore year, huge. Absolutely huge. And that's why UCLA mixed in with all these freshman players and sophomore players, a super senior, have been able to work their way through a tough travel schedule and just dominate the competition. To wrap things up with Northwestern, the Bruins on a Friday night won 8-2, and in a Saturday matinee where they celebrated their seniors, their Big Ten championship, won a run-ruled mercy rule affair 11-1 against Northwestern in 7 innings, which set themselves up like this. They play the 7 seed and the 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They play Illinois first on a Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. And the Big Ten championship tournament is played in Omaha. That's where they play the College World Series. So they go to Omaha, play Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific. So that's 10 a.m. local. They go to Michigan, or they play Michigan, another 8 a.m. Pacific time start. So back-to-back early morning affairs for the Bruins because they got to stick 4 pools, 12 teams in one diamond and get all these games in without any weather delays and before the NCAA tournament selects the hosting and everything. The Bruins play Illinois and Michigan. So far, UCLA this year swept Illinois and dominated Michigan on a midweek affair way, way early in the season when they beat them 22-5 in early March the 4th. All right. So this is what the bracket looks like Pool A, which is the 1 seed Oregon, Nebraska, Michigan State. Pool B has UCLA, Michigan, Illinois. C is Iowa, Indiana, Rutgers. And then B is USC, Washington, and Penn State. So each pool has 3 teams. You play one game against each team. Some team gets a day off or 2 days off before their semifinal, if they make it. And if there is a tie, then the team with the higher seed just automatically advances. What in the Pac-12 tomfoolery is this? I guess I've never really looked at the Big Ten tournament prior to this season, because obviously we were never interested until UCLA and all the other West Coast teams made it into the Big Ten Conference. But come on, why are we setting these conference tournaments up that are going to send an automatic bid like a youth travel baseball tournament? Like, what in the world is this? All right, this is a little ridiculous. It's like, okay, UCLA just has to win one game, hope there's a split, and then they move on to the next round automatically. Like, yes, I understand the regular season counts, but why not just double elimination, do something else? Other teams have like build-ups where teams have to win 5 games before they can even make it to the semis or something ridiculous. There's not really a point if you're going to have 4 pools and then you win and then win, or you split and there's a 3-way tie. It's not even like run differential. It's based on, who's the higher seed? It seems a little wacky. It'll play out in UCLA's favor, hopefully. And if you go 0-2, that's not going to help their hosting credentials. It's really down to UCLA and Irvine at this point. And Irvine still has to solidify themselves as a top 16 team if they want to host. UCLA, you win 2 games or 1, most likely in the semifinal on May 24th. And then on the 25th, they play the championship game, I guess weather permitting, on the Sunday on, 2 noon or 2 p.m. Central, noon at the Pacific time zone. That's all UCLA has to do, is pretty much tread water in this Big Ten tournament, and they'll be a host in the NCAA tournament. And if things go their way, maybe they'll host the Supers. At the moment, UCLA is not going to be a top 8 team. 13 seed for sure right now, but not a top 8 team. Unless they go 4-0, beating Oregon and somebody else en route to a championship in the Big Ten tournament. Not sure that's the case. And I'm not sure if you really want to win this tournament. You want to win the whole shebang and make sure that you're ready to go. No injuries, make sure the pitching's lined up, and wait for the Memorial Day NCAA selection show for college baseball. And just think about this. Why is the softball tournament so different compared to the baseball tournament? The softball tournament is, let's play 4 straight days, single elimination, and get it all out of the way. This one, it's Pool A, Pool B, 3 games, different teams. It's a little ridiculous with how the games are scheduled in these pools. All right. So the tournament starts Tuesday, May 20th. In the Big Ten tournament, UCLA plays the 21st. They'll play the 22nd. And if they advance, they wouldn't play till the 24th. So they get a day off, 2 games, day off, semifinal, final, which is not how the regionals will work. Now, these bigger conferences don't like to set up their tournaments like the regional. They like to give their pitchers some rest and force those lower seeded teams to work that much harder to beat the top teams and still reward them with the seeding, which is how the Big Ten has set it up, kind of how the Pac-12 tournament, if I recall correctly, was set up as well for those final 2 years of the conference's existence, or 3 years. For now, UCLA is set up and ready to go. Illinois first, Michigan next. Should be fairly easy if the Bruins really want to win this tournament to get to the semifinal round at least, and maybe set yourselves up with another RPI, resume boosting opportunity against a USC or an Oregon. And that could either tie the season record or split the season record if it's UCLA versus USC. If that does, then that can make the difference between the Bruins being a 12 seed or 11 seed in the NCAA tournament. But until next time, John Savage's team is a Big Ten regular season co-champion with Oregon. Great job for that. The softball teams and the Supers, and so many more commits to come. And hey, we didn't even talk about Mick Cronin and the Bruins. All that and more on future Locked On UCLA episodes. So like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Continue to like this podcast. And hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.